Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, I think so. All right. All right. So good evening and welcome to the South Burlington City Council meeting for November 4th, 2024. Is that too loud?
Yeah. Travis, can you turn it down in the room a teeny bit? He's working on it.
And we will start with item number 1, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. And Andrew, will you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2, which is instructions on exiting the building in case of an emergency and review of technology options. Jesse Baker, City Manager.
Thank you. So thank you to those who are joining us in the room. If there's an emergency in the room, you can go out the left or right side of the rear of the auditorium and then turn left or right to get outside. For people participating remotely, thank you for being here as well. If you'd like to speak during any agenda item, please either turn your camera on and the chair will call on you, or send me a note in the chat and I will have the chair call on you. Other than that, we're not monitoring the chat for content.
Thank you. Item 3, which is agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order of agenda items tonight? I just want to point out that some of us have to get up really early tomorrow because there's something that's happening tomorrow that's really important. And some of us have captain responsibilities and need to be at City Hall by 6 a.m. to pick up all the equipment and take it to the polling places and administer the election. So if I had a proposal to take item 14, which was receive information on proposing state legislation on data sharing between the state and municipalities around local option tax receipts. Could we defer that to another meeting? Does anybody have a problem with that?
Sounds good. The only thing is that defer. Does that defer us being able to act on it? I mean, does it? It's not going to affect our budget season this time, regardless. So in that case, the timing is as urgent. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to defer item 14 to possibly the next meeting. And that's all I have proposed. Anybody else have anything that they want to change? Okay, so then we'll move on to item 4, which is comments and questions from the public not related to tonight's agenda. Is there anybody online or in the audience that wants to speak about something not on the agenda? Please come up and don't forget to turn on the mic and try again.
Is it on now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And remember to identify yourself.
Hey guys, nice to see you again. Of course, I'm here about pickleball. I want to preface with the fact that I have nothing against it. All for the people that want to play it, recognize the great health benefits for people. We've heard a lot about that. However, it's in the middle of a neighborhood. So I gave Elizabeth a list of the points that I want to make. The first one being we're climbing to 100 residents who've signed my petition, and I'm going to keep going. There's so many opinions that this is not where it should be from people I've spoken with. So the residents around the park do not want pickleball there. We don't want the noise. We do not want the traffic. We do not want the speeding. We do not want the clogged parking at Andrews Avenue, and we don't want the spill-off parking in Stonehenge. I know you think there's not a problem, and you gave it a handful of days to check it out. That's not the reality. I had to wave someone down going almost 50 2 weeks ago. People don't want to look at that portalette out their windows. We don't want it at the center of the beginning of the park. We don't want to experience it. We just don't want it there. We don't want children being bullied off the courts, and we don't want to be bullied into picking up balls that have gone out of the court for pickleball players who don't want to come out and get them themselves. We just didn't have a choice, but you have had phone calls, you have had emails, you have had me, you've had a few reports from Channel 5, Channel 3, And now I have to fill you in on the new plans. So residents from around Szymanski Park have offered to fund me to get a lawyer over quality of life. They believe it's a good idea. I believe it's a good idea. I've had calls and interviews from people. I don't contact anyone. People contact me. I simply come to meetings. A doctor from Boise, Idaho is compiling evidence of the damage of pickleball noise. That's going to be revealed, probably take a year or so. A woman from LA contacted me who's keeping a national map of pickleball trouble. Szymanski Park is now on it. A gentleman from LA contacted me who has a production company who's doing a documentary series on neighbors, and one of the biggest problems is pickleball. They've asked to interview me, and I have accepted. And some of the people in the neighborhood on my petition also want to speak. In short, we don't want pickleball in the neighborhood, and you didn't ask us, and we didn't vote for it, and we feel it should go to someplace with public parking, public bathrooms, water for players, where noise does not impact people's lives. And I thank you for cutting the hours down. It didn't really help because people didn't want to leave at 8 o'clock. I myself went down many nights and said, are you aware 8 o'clock is the end of pickleball and we'd like to go to bed now, put our children to bed. Most people were really good. Residents from South Burlington were really good. Other people not so much. So my efforts continue. I'd rather not go through all this. I wish you'd reconsider. Move it to Dorset Park, someplace where it's appropriate for it to be. I know this was an experimentation. It didn't work. So thanks for your time. And if you want my list, I'm happy to give it to you. I gave it to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on something that's not on the agenda tonight? Anybody online? Okay, we're going to move on to item 5, which is Councilors Announcements and Reports on Committee Assignments and City Manager's Report. Elizabeth, would you like to start?
Sorry, no, there it is. I was invited by Helen Head to attend the Champlain Housing Trust Cornerstone Luncheon. I do have a conflict on November 7th, but we do have Vince Polduck and Chris Trombley will be attending, as well as possibly some other members of the Affordable Housing Committee. So we'll get a report back from those folks, hopefully. I did attend the Chamberlain Sound Map presentation and the Detilio Drive naming, and then had an opportunity to meet with a small working group with Kelsey Peterson on potential resizing and consolidation of the Affordable Housing Committee and Housing Trust Committees. And I think it is the intent to try to get on the next meeting with a resolution about both resizing and consolidating those committees and sort of talking about the scope of the mission going forward. So the council can expect that coming up. Thanks.
Andrew?
Sure. I'll actually be attending the CHT meeting second year in a row. I think it's a really valuable session. I also attended the Detilio Drive naming. I thought that was fantastic community spirit. Tim did a great job up there. I attended an open house at Chamberlain School discussing the Safe Routes to School project and encouraging folks to participate in that and provide feedback for what we can do to improve safety getting to that school. Attended a few BCA meetings where we counted a lot of votes. And I attended a session hosted by the National Wildlife Federation on how to better integrate climate change education into curriculum, and intend to kind of share some of that with Tim Jarvis and others at the school district as part of the school's climate action plan, which I'm participating in.
Thank you. Lori?
Yeah, I left my notebook at home, so I have some quick notes.
Okay.
I may miss something, but I will also be attending the CHT gathering on the 7th, and I'm looking forward to that. And was at the Detilio Drive dedication, which was a remarkable ceremony, and it was great to see so much community and student enthusiasm. Also, have been doing ballot processing, and it is amazing to watch the process and see how organized and how much oversight there is on everything that happens. And I'm just amazed by it, and I'm looking forward to having it behind us. I've been working with the library to get The Quietest Year movie played here in January, and I'm also looking at having it be potentially a monthly film and discussion series on climate, environment, and our future, which I think is a pretty salient thing, and maybe working with the Energy Committee on that as well. And for the two committees that I'm on, the Natural Resources and the Parks and Recreation, they both are very short on committee members and are having trouble with quorums. And they are right now starting a recruiting process and have spoken to Jesse, and they are going to be advertised, and hopefully we will have some candidates to get those back up to where they can predictably meet and not have quorum issues. And lastly, I attended the presentation of the active transportation plan, and I was somewhat surprised to hear that it was that they have completed their contract and that they are going to be making their final presentation to council. And I was surprised because though there have been a couple of public hearings, what I saw and heard did not meet my expectation of what I thought an active transportation plan would be. And there was discussion of it being coordinated with the Parks and Open Space Plan, which is just barely getting started, and yet they're complete before that started. So that coordination is not happening. And what I saw from the presentation was much more of an assessment than a plan. And when I think of a transportation plan, I see where we want to go, what the transportation network is going to look like, and how we're going to encourage people to use it. And what I've seen so far was more of an assessment of this is where we have trails and this is where we don't, and this is the corridor we want to put more crossings on, et cetera. So I don't know if there's a way to have more input into the process. And Jesse, I know that we're the high level guys and you guys have all the fun, which is very cool. But I think that it's appropriate on things like this to have times where it checks in with council so that we can see whether the plan that's being presented or developed is in alignment with what the vision is. So I just wanted to put that out as a sort of awareness. And I don't know if there's anything that can be done at this point, but certainly going forward, I'd hope we can do it differently.
Can I add? I attended the same sessions, Laurie, and I wholly concur.
Thank you, Lori. Mike?
Thank you, Tim. Yes, I also attended the Active Transportation Plan meeting. There were about 20 or so people, including 3 of the City Council, several members of the Bike and Ped Committee. But what I was really happy to see was some new faces I hadn't seen before, and this is what these outreach events are really about. I, for one, tend to go to them to try to listen and to hear voices I haven't heard that don't have the opportunity to show up at these city council meetings. But having listened to those voices and the presentations, I would also say that what I was struck by is that if we're going to finish this network, and finish it in a time frame that I think a lot of us are hoping for. I'm not really convinced that the Penny for Paths program is going to be able to allow us meet that objective. Also, would think again about a clearer strategy on not just sort of seemingly, as you said, we have a gap here, let's fill it. We have a gap here. It's do we finish any particular area, whether it's having a closer integration of our rec and open spaces to various neighborhoods, or to me, what strikes me very important is bringing it on all our neighborhoods into the city center, as this is a big push that we're doing. I think that in particular would be good because it would hit so many of our goals, which is a shared sense of South Burlington, avoid congestion in the city center, address green issues, help generate more buzz in the city center, which helps grow revenue. So I also was left feeling, what exactly is the finishing points of these plans, but also, are there really the resources there to do it? I also attended the airport sound map, and sort of related to the previous meeting, I overheard two gentlemen talking about how they were hoping very much to see this green space in the bike path that was there, and sort of bemoaning the fact that they hadn't realized. So I was happy that I could share with them, since I overheard them, that at our retreat we added this particular issue to our sort of priority list. The airport has the lead on it. The airport will pay for it. But we took the decision to empower the city to make this a priority, to engage and hopefully see that realized. Like the rest of you, I attended the processing of early votes. I agree. Kudos to Holly, but also to all the members who gave their time, commitment, and the seriousness with which they took their work. It really drives home how important maintaining the confidence in the electoral system is at every level of our society, and it was really sort of emotional, moving thing to participate in that. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the Toledo Drive ceremony. We had a Green Mountain Transit emergency meeting regarding the fiscal cliff. I'm really sorry because my son was one of the beneficiaries of her incredible charm, grace, and comfort whenever we came there, whenever he basically needed special things. So I'm so glad it was such a rousing success. As far as the GMT meeting that I attended, the process keeps going forward, shifting, but I sort of felt good to hear the chair of the board give a shout out to South Burlington and the very excellent cooperation GMT was having from the city and helping to try to navigate this fiscal cliff in a way that will generate more public ridership opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I attended a planning commission meeting. I also attended the airport noise exposure map unveiling. I was not aware that at 5:30 that night, the Guard was going to give a press conference on their proposal to take off with afterburners and change their trajectory and inflection point to reduce the noise over Winooski. I had heard about it in advance, but I didn't know that that was going to be the day they were going to have the press conference. Sorry, I missed that. I also attended a pension advisory committee meeting. We did not have a quorum. We took no action, but I can report that from the actuary's comments, the South Burlington pension plan, which is currently closed to any new people, is funded at greater than 94% fair market value, which is really excellent for that plan. I did also attend 2 BCA counting sessions. I was there with Lori and Mike and Andrew, and so we keep hearing in the news about, people are nervous about, the how well guarded and how counted and chain of custody. And I just to say that in South Burlington, the chain of custody is very strong on all ballots. They're either mailed in or dropped off. They're taken, they're checked against a checklist, they're checked off, they're bundled. BCA then pulls them apart, then rechecks them on the checklist, then counts the count again, then opens them up, then runs them to the machines. The machines are signed off on the tape beginning and ending of every counting session. Right, so, and then those ballots are then bagged and then they're sealed, and the sealed number goes onto a sheet, and every member signs the tag and signs the sheets as well, and the rolls that come out of the counting machine. So we're ready for tomorrow. Nobody should feel insecure about the voting process or the counting process in in Vermont, at least in South Burlington. I just want to make that statement. I also went to the Tech Jam at Hula on Saturday, a couple Saturdays ago. I like to go to them all the time. I like to walk around and talk to exhibitors. There were over 50 companies represented there. Of course, Beta on Logic and Dynapower was there. And so got to talk to them a little bit. And it was pretty well attended. If you haven't been down there, it'll be October of next year. I suggest you just, register. It's free. Go in from 10 to 3. It's a really great opportunity to talk to people about their companies, about who they're looking for, and to get the feel of the economic and high-tech vitality of this area. I also did attend the Detilio Drive dedication, and I gave a little speech, and it's a lot of fun speaking to, elementary school kids. I felt like I was at a political rally, waving my arms around or everything. But I thank them for taking the personal approach to naming that street and personalizing it to somebody that they all adore in that school, that has a real legacy, and then that name will have a legacy on that street sign for a very long time. So I really appreciated that. And I think that's all I have. Jesse?
Great, thank you. So we are in a really busy month at City Hall. We are doing our interviews for our vendors for our new finance system. Many members of the team spent the day today interviewing one firm, and we'll have another day next week interviewing another firm. It's really exciting to see. We are working in a really arcane financial system, so to see the power of what we could be doing in a cloud-based system. We're also training staff to use the new website, which will launch in January. So we have 3 days of training later in the month. We are interviewing consultants for our economic development strategic plan, and we are interviewing our climate manager applicants. And we're building the FY26 budget. So it's a really fun time at City Hall on the 3rd floor. We also have a impending vacancy in our HR director position. That position is posted. If you all know of any wonderful HR professionals in the city or in the region, please recommend that they take a look at that. Chief Burke and I are also working with on two state funding issues. So want you to be aware of this going into the budget process. So the Department of Mental Health has discontinued the grant they have given to the Howard Center for our community outreach team for the last 8 years. It creates about a $100,000 gap in that budget. We were not aware they were going to discontinue it. We received news from Howard Center last week of that. So that is creating, so we're working with our colleagues in our surrounding communities that we partner with on that program. Just a reminder, community outreach is embedding Howard employed and trained case managers in our police departments to respond either with a police officer or on their own to our neighbors who are in some kind of crisis. It's a hugely successful program, and we really don't want to see it eroded. In addition to that, the last legislative session, the legislature passed a bill separating, so we run a community justice center out of our police department as well. It's a restorative practice approach to repairing harm in the community when there are small infractions perpetrated against residents. So it brings in the perpetrator and the victim together and does a restorative practice with them. The legislature separated, historically the Department of Corrections has funded that, as well as funded what's called COSA's communities, COSA's community, forget what the O stands for, circles of support for folks returning from incarceration into the community, and reparative practices. So they basically separated the pre-charge work, work that's done before a criminal charge is brought, from the post-charge work, moved the pre-charge work to the Attorney General's office with no funding yet, although that could change in this fiscal year, or in the next fiscal year, and have said that they will only fund one center in Chittenden County. There are 4 centers in Chittenden County right now. There is some interest in supporting Burlington to do that work, because Burlington currently has the contract from the AGO's office to do court diversion. So the communities that currently have active CJCs are working with the Attorney General's office on what this may look like into FY26 and 27. I think Chief Burke and I both feel like, even though there could be some administrative efficiencies to be had, losing embedded CJC services in our police department would be a big loss. So we are working on those two things, heads up going into the budget process. Lots of wonderful comments already about Detilio Drive, so I will skip that and just thank the school community for their partnership in that event. We had 700 folks attend our Halloween community glow walk in City Center last week, which was really lovely. And then as I have been doing, I want to give the community a quick overview on the Longview property, which is the project at 1720 and 1730 Spear Street. So the team members, so the city, the property owner, Habitat for Humanity, Vermont Housing Conservation Board, and the South Burlington Land Trust all met last week. There is no action needed by the council at this point. The letter of support stands with the conditions in place. The project is scheduled to go to the VHCB board meeting on December 13th for consideration, and VHCB is working very hard with the property owner to put together a set of conditions that will make it as competitive a project as possible. Surprisingly to me, I had not heard this before, VHCB and Habitat both expressed an interest in maximizing the number of homes on the parcel. Habitat suggested that 16 homes was the bare minimum they could do to make the project feasible. And VHCB is also very interested in ensuring that there are pedestrian and vehicular transportation options between the two neighborhoods that are on either side of Spear Street, so that we may see that as a condition that VHCB puts on the funding if it's awarded. VHCB also shared that they have received the most both positive and negative feedback about this project of any project they have funded in the last 3 years. So I'm confident that the professionals are working really hard to put forward something competitive, but I'm not sure of the outcome. NEAT has started to survey the property as indicated in one of our conditions, and is appraising the 2.5 acres that would go to Habitat, completing that appraisal. So that's the update to the community at this point. Until we hear, I think, what happens at the VHCB board meeting, I don't think there's any future action for the council. So we're just monitoring the progress as it moves forward. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jesse. Moving on to item 6, which is the consent agenda. Part A, to consider and sign our disbursements. Part B, approve the minutes from June 17th, 2024 and June 19th, 2024. And Part C, approve the issuance and execution by the city manager of a relocation adjustment order to Vermont Gas Systems Incorporated for the South Burlington Bicycle and Pedestrian Bridge over I-89 in accordance with 19 VSA 1014, 19 VSA 1111, and 30 VSA 2504, and in substantially the same form as the attached draft order. Is everybody comfortable with this consent agenda? Can I have a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Seconded.
We have a motion and second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to item 7. It's almost 7 o'clock. Pretty well. We're gonna go a minute ahead. All right. So we have a public hearing warned for 7 p.m. on the Land Development Regulation Amendments L.D.R 24-01 to 24-10 as recommended by the Planning Commission and related to the requirements of Acts 47 and 18 and city goals on housing, climate change, and transportation, featuring Paul Connor, the Director of Planning and Zoning. Good evening, Paul.
Hi, folks. So as indicated in your memo, tonight is your second public hearing. As you may recall, last month you made some adjustments to the prior version following your first public hearing, which created tonight's hearing. So I would invite you to open the hearing. We did receive one letter today that I'll make note of during the hearing for you. Then close it, and you can decide what actions or further discussion you'd like.
So I move to open the second public hearing on draft amendments to the Land Development Regulations LDR 24-01 through LDR 24-10.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And it's unanimous. The public hearing is now open. Who in the public would like to comment on these LDR changes? Anybody online? Please turn on your camera or raise your hand. Anybody in the room? I'm not seeing anybody. How long do we have to hold the public hearing open?
Probably a minute past
Okay,
7 would
a minute
be
past. It's 7 o'clock now.
Tim, while you're waiting,
Yes.
I'll make note that
Sure.
the council received a letter today from Richard Kate from UVM, and we can speak about recommendations afterwards, but it basically contained two requests, one regarding a change in the zoning map that was shown on the zoning map, and one was in a change in a definition of educational support facilities. And we've got a recommendation for you on both, but I just want, as part of the hearing, acknowledge receipt of it.
And we received this letter like pretty close to the meeting tonight.
Yes.
And these regulation changes have been out there for quite a while. Somebody must have come back from vacation and finally took a look at the what the changes are.
We have a recommendation, and we have concurrence from UVM on that recommendation.
Okay. We do have a motion that contains information about those, the anomaly and the, how would you characterize the second part? Is the description of the lands? Of
Are you speaking about the educational support facility? The Planning Commission, in their amendments, sought to clarify what an educational support facility is as a use, and it added some language to say that this is specific to post-secondary institutions. UVM expressed some concerns of a side effect of that clarification, that it might mean that everything has to happen on a given parcel as opposed to across their land. So that's their concern, and we have a recommendation for how to address it.
Well, now it's 7:02. No comments from public or from online?
So I move to close the second public hearing on draft amendments to the land development regulations, LDR 24-01 through LDR 24-10.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion among council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. It's unanimous, and the public hearing is now closed. So now we move on to item number 8, which is possible action to adopt these amendments as recommended by the Planning Commission related to the requirements of Acts 47 and 18, city goals on housing, climate change, and transportation, or instead of third public hearing, Paul Connor. We need to set a third? No, we don't. Okay.
So
Choices for you. So you are welcome to adopt them this evening, and that would be the staff recommendation. But should you choose to make changes, you would need to warn a third public hearing.
Would you like to make the motion?
So I move to adopt draft amendments to the land development regulations, LDR 24-01 through LDR 24-10 as presented. Further, apologize for this, the consolidated zoning map warned for public hearing includes a small anomaly where a portion of a parcel on the west side of Spear Street, north of Swift Street, was removed from the habitat block, and instead of showing low-scale neighborhood district, it appears to show natural resource protection district. The purpose of removing the small anomaly from the habitat block is to allow development as low-scale neighborhood, not restrict it to the very low levels of development allowed in the natural resource protection district. City Council directs the Planning Commission to change the zoning of this small anomaly from natural resource protection to low-scale neighborhood during the next amendment to the land development regulations. Further, the definition of educational support facility was warned to be amended to restrict the use to uses, quote, auxiliary and accessory to post-secondary educational facilities, end quote, to clarify what types of educational facilities can have educational support facilities. UVM has identified a potential interpretation of language requiring any educational support facility to be located on the same lot as an educational facility. The City Council requests the Planning Commission examine this definition for clarification and include any recommended changes during the next amendment to the land development regulations.
We have a motion?
So moved.
Well, you moved it.
I moved
You
it.
moved, I second.
Okay, now you've seconded it. All right.
And just so you know, we did hear back from UVM, and they support this, what was just read aloud.
Great.
They appreciate your addressing the subject and are satisfied with the result.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
So I think that the regulations are really terrific in many respects. The transportation demand management rules, I think, are really important. to our climate action goals. Really well thought out, really thorough. I love the EV charging rules. I think updating and strengthening the inclusionary zoning rules, the bonus, the simplification, all the work done to make these rules consistent with state law, Act 47, all that really well done. And for those reasons, I'm going to certainly vote for this package, but I just want to say that I am still concerned about the ability in low-scale neighborhoods for someone to build, 30 to 50 plus units per acre. I think I'm in favor of density, and I think density is really important for a lot of goals, but I think that scale is just too much. I think it's a seismic change. It's too much of a change for our neighborhoods, for the character of the neighborhoods in which this change would happen. I would have preferred increasing the minimum lot size to some other number, not 5,000. I know it had been an acre, 10,000 some places. I think it would have been better to leave it at some number other than 5,000. I just think it's too much. So I'd love to see us reconsider that in the future. Just three other quick points. Just want to make sure the PC is working, Planning Commission is working on standards for lot coverage, because I know that we increased the lot coverage ratio for all lots, even for large lots, which in my mind could lead to a lot of impervious surface. I don't think that was intentional. I think that was an oversight. I'd love to see that reconsidered in a future draft. In terms of the TDM standards, we've talked about this. I'd love to see the ability for a renter that doesn't have a car to choose not to pay for parking. I know we're going to need to do some parking management to make that happen, but we heard testimony from a former city council in Burlington how effective that policy is in Burlington. I think it's really important for us to pursue that policy for new buildings and for existing buildings. Finally, I hope that we're working on that request from one landowner who felt too constrained by having to put all buildings within 100 feet of each other in the NRP when the landowner owed like 45 acres. It feels really onerous to me and too restrictive. I'd love to see that relaxed a bit.
Thank you, Andrew. Other discussion?
I have
Sure, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think I mentioned in a note I sent earlier that there was some feedback from some of the members of the Affordable Housing Committee because of the quorum issue, that the opportunity to interface with the Planning Commission during the development of these LDRs, the sense was that because much of the LDR focus was on really complying with the Home Act, that there wanted to be more engagement on that. And I think the overlap of sort of making sure we have a quorum on some of our working committees, and then what we've already identified as a need, and I know, Jesse, you're working on, is really how committees can interface and really giving committees opportunities to interface where there's common ground would be very helpful. I know all along some of my interest and focus with the changes in these LDRs, which I did not agree with the version that's being presented tonight at the last meeting, but was really around, does this actually enhance our opportunities for housing? And there's been a recent report at the state level, but a housing needs assessment, including a deeper dive on Chittenden County in assessing the 2025 housing needs, and it shows a significant gap in actual versus targeted housing units. So I know that we have identified some specific areas that we believe these changes in the LDRs will enhance opportunities for housing, and those are documented in Paul's note to council earlier. What I would really ask is that we monitor, what is coming in to the city in terms of development that is leveraging these changes in LDRs and enhancing the opportunities to close that housing need gap. Thanks.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Mike?
Yes, I'd just like to direct one question to Paul, if I may. Paul, in terms of these adopted changes, as we think about affordability challenges and revenue generation, one of the conversations we've been having, and we were tasked that Jesse was tasked the last retreat to come up with the revenue models. In terms of commercial development in those areas that we have designated for commercial development. Would you say that this has created the flexibility we need to grow more commercial facilities in these designated areas? I say this only because in looking at the budget data, it shows that our commercial properties account for 8.7% of our building, but generate 34% of our property revenues. And it doesn't take much math to figure out that if you could grow that commercial property by 1.5%, again, in these designated areas, it could help us address these affordability. So I guess my simple question is this something that's already been addressed and that this does it? Because I understand that this is about simplifying, accelerating, making things easier for development in those areas, whether it's housing or commercial, or would we be looking at another step if we chose to go down this
Right.
path?
What I would say is that this round of amendments makes some strides in that direction. Things like eliminating minimum lot sizes in our commercial areas just makes it a little bit easier process. Things have been improved. I would say that more substantial is the project that has been kicked off in the last couple of months of the Planning Commission, where two things are taking place. What are supporting uses and activities that in our commercial industrial areas that are appropriate, which has been a request from the business community to help them with their business growth, and reviewing and consolidating our table of uses. So we have all sorts of different uses. A printing facility is a separate activity from a light industrial, and it's not especially modern. It is a thing that is a big snag for creativity and for simplicity, and so the Planning Commission is looking at both of these as areas specifically on the commercial side of things, after the last round was really focused mostly on residential, not entirely, but largely based on the Act 47 and Act 181. So the focus for this next iteration is that just kicked off a couple of months ago is the commercial industrial areas, and of course maintaining our city center form-based code, which is the nearing completion project now. So
Thank you very much. And
Yeah.
when would we expect to see
so the Planning Commission at their last meeting approved the two charges for those projects that I just listed, with their target completion date of being in hearings by April or May on those.
Okay, thank you very much,
Yeah.
Paul.
And Paul, is the Planning Commission going to look at allowing residential in some of those IO areas to some degree?
So in the category of supporting uses, overnight accommodations in various forms is a part of that. So if you recall earlier this calendar year when you adopted the new city plan, there was a new color category of purple, which was commercial industrial with supporting activity. The charge to the Planning Commission is to explore that subject, whether housing means housing in a traditional sense or housing means business affiliated accommodations, which was a request that we'd received from OnLogic that may not fall into the category of residential, but rather would be more of a short-term stays for employees and their guests, that kind of thing. So exploring that whole area is the scope.
Would like a suites residence inn hotel qualify for that?
All of that's on the table.
It's on the
right now.
table, okay.
Balancing out that providing supporting uses and activities to commercial industrial while recognizing that the geography for commercial industrial space is a limited geography, and if it becomes too much on the residential side, what we might see is housing and not businesses and jobs. And so trying to make sure that they're being thoughtful on behalf of the community to think about balancing these short and long term.
Good.
So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the table. It's been seconded. Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. I guess that's all. Is that all for you tonight? Is that it? Is that all he has to? No. Okay, good. Stick around. Item number 9. Received report from the Charter Committee on all resident voting in local elections and provide direction to staff and the committee, with Anne Lalonde, Chair of the Charter Committee, coming down, and here comes Donna Kinville. Oh, yeah.
Thank you to the members of my committee who are here, especially Donna. I know she's very busy.
There we go. So thank you to Donna for being here and Kate and Peter also. So the Charter Committee got a charge from the council to come back tonight with a recommendation on a ballot item allowing all legal South Burlington residents to vote in local elections. So the Charter Committee met twice since then, and we agreed that we could really use some more time to conduct some interviews and collect some data before we can make really a thoughtful recommendation to the council. There's a list in our report to the council of things we'd like to look at. We'd like to talk to Chris Shaw, who, on behalf of the South Burlington Democratic Committee, brought this to the council in the first place. Winooski, Burlington, and Montpelier all have all resident voting for local issues. And we have a lot of questions for the clerks there. Some of our members want to talk to people who work the polling places to see how it actually works in practice. We want to talk to people in South Burlington who aren't citizens but who are legal residents and what they think about this possibility. Maybe have some public hearings, get some public input. We did get some initial information from the town clerks in those 3 cities, but everyone on the council and the committee wanted to learn more and to have us be able to ask them directly. Everybody on the committee asked them questions before we could get something that would help the council. So I don't know if you want us to tell you about what we heard from the town clerks, but we do have a nice chart. Donna, do you
I just want to
summarize?
add that when we asked the clerk these few things, they just responded with stuff that they knew off right away. They didn't go and research like how many people in your town or city who are non-U.S. citizens but would qualify to vote, or residents of your town. They didn't. Most of them didn't know that. So they just answered stuff right off the cuff as they could because they were busy with the election that's happening tomorrow.
Right.
So
this was a particularly difficult time to get information that we were interested in. I mean, there are issues. These cities have a separate voter checklist for folks who are not citizens but legal residents who can vote. So that's a complication that we want to know more about, partly for our recommendation, but also to bring to you if there are additional costs or time for Holly to spend on something like this. And also just to note too that there is still a legal issue that's open on the non-resident voting. Montpelier and Winooski, their challenges were dismissed, challenges to those charter changes, but Burlington's charter change is challenged in litigation is at a really pretty early stage. It's at the Chittenden Superior Court. It hasn't even gotten to the Vermont Supreme Court yet. And the question there is whether a vote on a school budget in particular is actually a local vote, or is it really a statewide vote, which would be impermissible in this case. So because it has implications beyond just like South Burlington. So that's the question that's before the court. Now, I don't know if I made that.
Do you know who the challenges were in those 2 situations?
I don't. I think one of them, I believe one of them was a local Republican group in Burlington and Montpelier, but they had individuals who claimed that their votes were being diluted if other people were allowed to also vote. So they were individuals, but enabled by a larger organization that I'm not.
But do you think they were local organizations that were challenging? Do you know if they had legal help from outside the state?
I don't know.
I'm just curious.
That's a good question.
Yeah. So the one that's ongoing right now is not the same subject matter as the previous one. This one's about state ed.
It's close,
Okay.
right? It's close. So the original, so the Vermont Supreme Court wrote a long opinion in the Montpelier case. Yeah. That said it's constitutional under the Vermont Constitution for cities, for municipalities to allow folks who are legal residents but not citizens to vote in local elections. And so it didn't really involve the question of, well, are local votes actually statewide, because they have statewide implications. So there's still that issue that
So whatever process we take, we might be like piggybacking on what happens with Burlington because, yeah, it might take a while,
right
right, to be resolved.
right, and also, you know, we could talk about also what votes exactly we would want to open up to all residents. You know, would it be the school? You know, are there other local questions that are decidedly local that we wouldn't have to? We wouldn't be running afoul of the potential challenge in Burlington, because I know we wouldn't want to be challenged. So if we can avoid that.
But the city clerk would have to maintain a separate book of registered.
Do you want to talk about the checklist?
Yeah, so the state has a Vermont statewide voter checklist, and one of the first questions on it is, are you a U.S. citizen? And as soon as you don't click that, you can go no farther in their system. So what the town clerks have had to do in these 3 cities is actually have a separate database and maintain that separate database by itself. And I just found it very challenging. One database keeps disappearing, another's just an Excel sheet. Yeah, no one's found a good way to manage it yet.
But yeah, and I'd add too that just the numbers seem to be small. Also, I mean, you know, this is one of the things that we want to find out and kind of balance this. But Burlington has, I think, 116 legal resident non-U.S. citizens registered. Winooski didn't say. Montpelier, they have 18 people registered to vote. So it might be something that's a pain but doable, if you know, given the numbers. If our numbers are similar to those cities,
And then a decision on how many languages do you represent at the polls for each of these options. Talking with, I think, Sue Alenick, they just have like a cover letter for each of the languages that matches up to the actual ballot. So they're reading from a different language, but so that's an added expense of having the ballots translated, or do you make up different ballots for all the different things, all the different languages, and then having dispersed across the 5 districts as well as having even, it's a question of, Winooski actually has interpreters there all day, and it costs them $3,000 for each interpreter. At the polling location. So those are all things that
we may have that issue even regardless of
even
this,
with
right?
Right.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So there's all these questions that we have that we just don't have answers to.
Right. And I've talked to a lot of people. I know that everybody on the committee has a very open mind about it, but they just are not comfortable voting either way right now for a recommendation. So it is great that we have these 3 cities that we can, you know, and Dawn has connections and she can talk to the folks, but it would be great to bring them in and have everybody on the committee ask them questions. So I think given that we are not able now to give you a recommendation, it seems like this is going to have to be put off till possibly town meeting day 2026, because it's a charter change, so you would have to have 2 public meetings at certain times, and so so we bring bad news, I guess, but we would love to have, if there's feedback about, you know, does this sound like a good plan?
And there's always the option that, I mean, you can hold a special election if you so wish, or if there's going to be a special tipped vote or something that's off next year's election cycle, this could fit onto that as well. So it's not necessarily March 26th, but that would probably be the latest.
And you're looking for another member on the committee too, you said?
We do. Yes, that would be great.
Is this something we should start advertising for?
That is your decision.
It's our decision. I like that. And I read what your qualifications, like what the type of committee member you'd like to have in terms of age and.
Be great.
So.
I'd like to just say that I really appreciate the work that you guys have done, and reading your submission really made me aware of the complexity of the issue and how much needs to be really thought about to implement it effectively if we're going to. So I appreciate that, and I think taking the time is a great idea to get the questions answered. So we really, if we do this, we do it in a way that's going to be effective, going to give a significant number of people a voice, and not cost inordinate amounts for each one of those additional votes. So thank you very much for the work.
Quick question, do you know if the lawsuits came after the towns passed? But after, so they put it on their ballot, right, and it passed. Did it happen then, or did it happen after the legislature approved it?
After,
Okay.
yeah, the legislature approved it. They were, I think, I don't know if all three were vetoed. I think Montpelier and Winooski the governor vetoed those charter changes.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
the legislature
So we're probably
overrode
going to
them.
get sued. Yeah.
Well,
We may have a decision by then, yeah.
Yeah. So I echo what Laura said. I think the care and diligence that the committee took is really evident in this memo, and it's complicated, and we should take our time. We should get it right. However we decide to go, I mean, because this is complicated, maybe by then the legal questions will be settled, but I agree that we should do this in a measured way.
Yeah, and I would add to that I think because of the work that will happen going forward, I do think it's important to fill that vacancy in a timely way so that individual can participate in the full process too.
And I second that. I think filling that space is important. So you bring in all the different perspectives. As Tim said and noted, the goal to bring in someone younger. We saw that on the Planning Commission. I think that's been a very positive. If we constantly talk about the future of our community. It's, I think, providing that generation to have an active voice in it is important. And I also think following procedure, doing the due diligence in this case, or any decision our city makes on any issue, and not rushing things is always the smarter and the most prudent approach in terms of getting the outcome that doesn't have any unwanted consequences. So thank you very much for your diligence.
So do
one
we-
other thing I want to add, which is, I believe in your report you also were requesting a council liaison and a city staff person. Am I correct?
That is for the sextons.
Oh, that's the Stex. Oh, excuse me.
I'm not here.
I get it all mixed up so quickly. I'll hold that for the next one. Thank you. Yes.
So do we have a deficit of membership on committees where it's time to advertise for some new volunteers?
So when we made our appointments back in August, when you did that, there were a number of committees where we did not have enough applicants for positions, and there have also been several committees where folks have stepped off. So if you past practice has been, because the application process and the interview process is quite cumbersome for the council, that mid-year appointments don't happen unless there's a quorum concern. And if there's a quorum concern, then absolutely we do that. But that's just past practice. You have no policy to that end. So if you can always ask that we advertise for committees. So if you'd like us to advertise for all vacancies on committees, we can do that. If you'd like us to do targeted advertisement, we can do that as well.
Right during budget season, that's the time to do it, right? Sure. That was a joke.
But I think, Tim, I mean, I guess we'll have to decide, but I'm definitely think it's worth trying to fill this. We've heard this with affordability on the housing and not having that input into a decision when it came to LDRs. I think, what Lori said about the two committees he's on, having a hard time having quorum, and, the whole purpose of this policy committee, our groups, is to give us additional ideas. I mean, we have our thoughts, we have the benefit of our great city experts, but the idea is to maximize the ideas, especially as reflective of the community as possible. So I, for one, would be willing to say that we try to fill them all out, and we, if need be, have an extra session as we did this last time, just to focus on filling the positions.
Maybe in terms of timing, we should wait till after town meeting day? Is that acceptable? Is that too long? No.
I would like to see the NRCC and the Parks and Recreation done before then, because they are having a hard time meeting because
They have quorum concerns.
they're having quorum concerns.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to say about this is I find doing bulk interviewing to be a really cumbersome process, and I think it makes sense when there's a whole lot of, on an annual basis. But I think that if we can do a couple of interviews at a time, just snuck in every once in a while, it would be a lot easier and take up less intense processing if we were doing the NRCC one meeting and et cetera. So I just wanted to share that.
Lori, is the NRCC having problems just so I understand, because they've lost members or because the members not showing up?
Because they've lost members. And likewise with the parks.
And NRCC, we didn't appoint a full, we didn't have enough applications we didn't have a full slate when you appointed previously. Parks and Rec we did, so I'm curious where those folks went. But we can talk about that offline.
So our advertising methods are Front Porch Forum, the city newsletter,
City News, Front Porch Forum, our website,
other paper.
co-promoted in the superintendent's newsletter,
Okay,
our
another newsletter.
Facebook page, our
Right.
Twitter page.
Okay.
The social networks
But-
are key for generation.
But the other paper is the one that really, I mean, the others
And the
cost
other paper
time,
we
but the other
do-
paper costs money, right? Okay. Do we want to talk about what we want to do next? Do we want to go ahead and start advertising at a certain point, but not, knocking heads with other major agenda items coming up?
My conversation with Jesse was, and what I said to the two committees I'm on, that when they're ready to advertise, Jesse was going to get Andy to get on it and get it on the schedule. So unless the council says no, I think that's the path that was going to be taken.
The other thing we could do, the NRCC has, 11 members? Right?
And we talked about possibly reducing the
9?
size of the committee.
You could, right?
Um,
Do that.
Right?
Yeah,
11's a good number.
and that's another option as well.
Big number.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
So
right sizing is important.
right sizing might be also something to think about.
But whether it's right sizing, whether it's filling, I think it's in our interest to maximize the input we get from as broad a sense of the community as possible, to have all our committees fully staffed and not have long gaps. So again, I favor moving as fast as possible on these both.
Yeah, my feedback, Tim and Jesse, would be, practically speaking, we're going to be getting into the holiday season, but I do think there'll be a lot of interest as budgets roll out in January, sort of what's going on, and that's an opportunity for both committee to solicit interest, as well as folks who are sort of becoming aware of where there are gaps or interests focused as they're getting educated on the budget. So I think, based on the fact that town clerks and some of the folks you want to interview will start to, I don't want to say it'll free up after tomorrow, but maybe a week or two from tomorrow. But if there's a calendar of the interviews or testimony that the charter committee wants to do, and there may be interested folks kind of coming together at the same time, and I'm thinking maybe in the late January, February timeframe. I don't think it has to go past town meeting at all, because I think there's going to be a lot of engaged community members starting in January.
Okay. Well, thank you very.
Can I say
Go ahead.
back what I think I just heard? So start recruiting now for NRCC, Recreation and Parks Charter Committee. Maybe add on housing after the next meeting. Have those postings up through the holidays into early January for you to interview late January, February.
Or consider right sizing.
That-
Right sizing.
Yeah, well, that would take care of NRCC right now, but that requires a resolution, right? Yeah. Do we want to ask staff to come back with a resolution for next meeting for NRCC specifically?
I would like to get feedback from that
Okay.
committee.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. But you've got feedback, right?
And they're actively getting ready to ask for the application process to start.
So they should not do that till we have the application up on the website.
No, they would
Okay.
be asking you to do it, yes. They won't be doing that.
It's not a road trip before we start.
Yes.
All right, any other discussion for the Charter Committee? Well, no? Well, anybody in the public, online? Thanks for your report. Thanks for your work. It's very interesting, and it's interesting progress, especially with the other 3 towns, cities and towns. So
Right.
thanks. We look forward to hearing from you again.
Great, thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks.
We'll be back.
All right, moving on to item number 10, which is consider and possibly approve an update to the Memorandum of Understanding between the City and Library Board of Trustees with Jesse Baker, City Manager, and Stacy Pape, Chair of the Library Board of Trustees. Did I get your last name pronounced correctly? Okay. Thanks. Okay.
I've heard all kinds of fun ways to pronounce.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Do you want me to do table setting? And
Sure, set the table. It's
Great.
almost,
so Stacy and I and Jennifer and Jared have been working on the MOU between the city and the library trustees for a couple of years now. We have an MOU in place. It was last considered, reopened in 2013, and finalized in 2013. So since then, a lot's happened. The library's moved twice. We're in this beautiful new building co-located with the city. Staff have unionized. We've adopted new financial policies and human resources policies. So we really thought it was a good time, and the legislature approved Act 150 during the last session. We thought it was a good time to open up the MOU, think about what was working, what's not working. My perception is that Stacy and I and Jennifer have a whole lot of shared belief that how we're currently functioning is working very well. So we wanted to codify that to the extent it was different than in the 2013 MOU. So primarily what's different in this document is that it reflects our current financial and human resources practices between the city and the library staff. It accounts for an updated facility, updated maintenance practices, having maintenance staff at all, and future capital planning needs. It aligns the MOU to Act 150 and the requirements in that statute. And it sets shared expectations about our partnership and services for South Burlington for the decades to come. It also includes an intentional provision where we will have a conversation about this every 5 years. So there's kind of regular check-in periods. So that's what's before you. Anything I've missed, Stacy?
no, I think that's great. I do want to say quickly that my partner in crime over there, Anne Lalonde, has been very helpful with some of the legalese that I needed to make sure that we are putting in the right way. And Jared, of course, who's back there.
Well, excellent point that the trustees have considered this MOU themselves through a series of meetings and approved it.
Okay. That's important.
So that
Yes.
we want to make sure to privilege their voices before it came to you.
Absolutely. And like Jesse said, I think that we have a really nice partnership and work closely together to work through these, whatever is happening around the library and the city. And I hope that that will continue. Of course it will after I move on to something else. And Jesse's going to be here forever. So she'll be the person we can keep connected with.
And did this require review by the city attorney at all?
Yes, so Jared reviewed the MOU and reviewed it aligned to this new state statute. So made changes to ensure that we were aligned to that statute.
So the board is on board. The
The board
attorney's
is on board. Yes.
City staff's on board, right? And the city manager. So it sounds like everybody agrees that this is the thing to do, right?
Are we ready for a motion?
I am if
Just
you
need
are.
you.
Sure. Do you
I'm
have it?
anxious to make a motion.
No, there's a motion right here.
I know that's what I'm going to
Is
make.
that- well, I'd like
Yeah.
to read that motion, please.
You want to read it?
No,
Go
I,
ahead.
I would like you to read that motion.
That's what I was going to do. I move to approve the memorandum of understanding by and between the City of South Burlington and the Burlington Public Library Board of Trustees and authorize the council chair to execute this MOU.
Hold on,
Second.
hold on. You said Burlington Public Library.
South Burlington Public Library.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Second without amendment.
Details.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Well, I have discussion. I love that library. It is an incredible resource, and what a great investment for the city to have made, and it's going to pay off for scores and scores of years. So having to count the ballots, right? I'm up in the other top, that second floor, and I don't go in that area, but coming back towards the bathrooms, there's that wall of things that you can take out that aren't books, which is great. I know there's a telescope that's downstairs you can take out, right? But, and I've been hearing reports that other libraries around the country are making interesting things available for you to check out that are necessary daily items that you might not want to go
Or
buy.
not, like a big screen to do outside movies and all kinds of
Right.
fun things as well. So thank you. I myself am very happy to be part of the trustees and working towards all the things that we need to do for this community and the library. And I know we have a great group.
And I mean, back in 2005, Dora Whittier was showing us elevations, 3 different elevations of what could be, and we were all like, how much is that going to cost? And we went, oh, that's not here. It's not going to happen. But
I have a little, yes, fundraising. How many times have I said and heard the word fundraising? But we did it, so it's exciting.
Can I? Just fantastic work, and I'm glad everyone's on board and everything's all set. Part of this obviously is done reflecting the change of the city center and the vibrance. I was just wondering if you could just, now that the city center is starting to fill out, if there are any initial impressions on how that relationship is working with the library and our new fortunate residents that we have here in our center.
The library is very busy. Last month for National Library Card Month, we actually went to a few of the residents on Market Street to encourage people to sign up for their library cards and let them know what's here. And we have thoughts for, knock on wood, changes of the bus routes so that we can encourage more people from Shelburne Road. So we are talking about that as trustees within the community of hopefully continuing to work on accessibility. Children's space is busting at the seams. So when I was here last month with Jennifer doing the budget pieces, talking about the hopes to open on Sunday for some hours and maybe utilize some more spaces for study rooms, because now that we have UVM and the medical center and more students coming in to utilize those spaces, I think we have different plans, but it is fabulous. It's just so nice to be in there. I stop by on a regular basis and see the programming and the staff and how busy they are and how happy people seem to be. And I just had a coworker actually text me this morning and said, I did my remote work at the library today and it was amazing.
Great, and congratulations to you and all your colleagues.
Can I add one more thing, not about City Center, but about being co-located with City Hall? I think the credit for this goes to Sue and to Paul's team, I think. They had a conversation about, when you walk into the library, there's a front display that there's often seasonal displays or topic-specific displays. So city staff have taken that over. So there was a planning and zoning staff display of book recommendations. Right now we have the city manager's suite display of book recommendations and who on staff has recommended books. And that's fine for the community. It has been amazing for the third floor. The amount of conversations I hear in the lunchroom or passing in the hallways about, oh, you read that book? That book is great. I haven't read that book. I should pick it up. It's been a really lovely
well, that
addition.
sounds like a throwdown. That's a throwdown for city
Yes,
council
city
to come up with the city
council.
council recommendations, area.
Geez, Tim, did you read that
Library.
book?
I have a list.
Did you read that one? It was really good.
Yes. But you have to get at least one book of Lauren Isley in that library because you don't have any, I don't think, at this point. But that's okay. I'll donate the one I have. How about that? Yeah. All right. So we have a motion and we have a second on the table. You ready for the vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you very much for coming
Thank
tonight.
you so much. Do we need to sign while I'm here?
Sure.
You can keep going.
Thank you. All right, going on to item number 11, which is receive and consider approving the Public Art FY25 work plan with Amanda Holland. Is Amanda online? Not here. Does Penny gonna?
If
Oh,
I know
Penny's here.
Amanda had another conflict tonight, do you want us to go down and come back if she comes? Or-
She's planning to come online.
We can shuffle. You want to? Okay. We're going to bypass item 11 and go to 12, which is receive the Planning Commission's FY25 work plan. No action is needed. Paul Connor, Director of Planning and Zoning.
So if I can just say one thing about these, so the Public Art Committee, now the Planning Commission, are your first in a series over the next 2 meetings of you considering the work plans of your committees and approving them to align to your FY25 policies and strategies, but for the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, because they have independent authority, you don't actually approve their work plan, but we want to make sure you are aware of what it was, and obviously the Planning Commission and Paul work hard to make sure the 2 documents are aligned and aligned to the city plan.
Just discussion.
Just discuss.
And we actually already heard a little preview of it, right?
Yes, you have a preview of it. So Paul Connor, Director of Planning and Zoning, I hope you don't mind, but we gave Jessica the evening off as she had a work commitment this evening. So as Jesse just noted, the Planning Commission adopted their work plan shortly after you finished your policy priorities and strategies work at the end of September. And so it includes addressing each of the items that you flagged as your policy priorities that relate to the Planning Commission. And that is the bulk of their work because they have a number of large projects that had come up through the ranks through the prior discussions of the Planning Commission staff had brought it to the leadership team, and that came to you also. No big surprises there. There are a few added items in there around what we would call maintenance of the regulations. So some of the things that you all spoke about this evening would fall under general maintenance categories, some things that they had specifically identified to be looking at and making sure are tweaks to the LDRs and thinking about the effects of prior amendments, that kind of thing. They will be looking later this month at the first look at the Unified Planning Work Program requests of the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. I note that one because that's a big source of important projects for the city, often related to climate, transportation, and hazard mitigation, but not exclusively. You get to see that in January to put our requests into the RPC, which funds often 80% of the project and sometimes 100% of the project. So they're beginning to look at that later this month. And they have added into their work plan this year to spend some time reviewing the city plan, and they plan to do that annually of now that you've adopted your 2024 city plan, what is the progress that's been made? We're really excited to, over time, work with the data manager and really, bring that to the next level, to bring that to you. But I think what their vision for this would be to have a chance to take a step back, which areas at a high level, which areas are being made, is progress being made on, which areas is less progress being made on, and what recommendations would come out of that to adjust future work plans so that you all are having the chance for the Planning Commission as stewards of that document to get some recommendations for them. So those are the high level things that I just wanted to note on their behalf. They're really excited to be taking on some really important projects, as there often are in our community. So happy to hear any discussion from you all. To Councilor Chalnick, your notes from earlier this evening, those items that you flagged, I believe, were on the council's discussion at the last month. Those are going to be transmitted, all of them, to the Planning Commission, along with your motion from tonight to the Planning Commission for their next meeting. We wanted to sort of get past this set of regulations so that we weren't confused in the public with current versus future, but that will be all transmitted to them.
Paul, can I ask you a question? You said that there was a focus on the issues that we sort of flagged as our strategic priority. So safe to say city center was moving that ball forward seems to be one of the key objectives that we collectively agreed on. Is that well covered there?
That is well covered there. We currently are working with a consultant, Greg Rabideau, who has been doing a review of the form-based code, has been meeting with the development community, with the designer community. We've briefed the Planning Commission broadly on the project, and beginning at their very next meeting, they're going to be beginning to see the first recommendations from Greg Rabideau on how to adjust the form-based code to meet the next 10 years. We've approved 20 new buildings under the code since it was adopted in 2016, so it's a good time to do an update to it, think about what the different conditions of the next 10 years are going to be, where a lot of what we've seen thus far has been more or less greenfield development around us. The next phases of this will still have some greenfield properties, such as the east end of Market Street, but also areas like San Remo Drive and the University Mall and north of Williston Road, where the circumstances are somewhat different. And so making sure that we have a code that is both nimble enough and also thoughtful enough to those needs for the coming years. That's the first priority of the Planning Commission, and then on the heels of that is what we spoke about this evening in the commercial industrial areas.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Very happy to hear that. One, just put a fine two points on the city center and the development. One thing that has come up, as we know, we've all been talking about, is city green. If that were to evolve at some point in time over the next couple, 3, 4, 5 years, is that something that would then have to be sort of factored in as a separate issue, or sort of is the ground being tilled, no pun intended, for the city green?
Well, there's a couple of different tools that could be deployed, both in terms of how you go about if you'd like to make it city policy to move in that direction. So that there's a packet of tools there that can be considered both regulatory and non-regulatory. And then ultimately, if and when a decision is made about a location, there may be some adjustments to how we want to shape the land around it in terms of pedestrian connections, in terms of what faces onto it. And so I think at this time, staff's recommendation to the Planning Commission is this is in your court to be making some policy choices, and as that moves forward, we will keep the Planning Commission thoroughly in the loop. We briefed them in September on the work that you had done to that date, and we will absolutely be keeping them right in the loop about where you're landing on that.
My last question goes back to the issue with the airport. We put on the priority. This says, the green space, the path. As you've mentioned, it's the airport has the lead, the airport has the funding, but there's going to be an active engagement with that. Is that something that would be covered in the scope? So if the airport moves forward, and obviously I think all of us are encouraging the airport to move forward sooner than later.
Sure. So on that issue specifically, I think that's where I might draw a little bit of a separation between the role of the Planning Commission and the role of the Planning Department. So in that instance, there's a lot of important partnership work to take place. That's really been done at the staff level too. With the airport, there's been some interaction with the NRCC, which we will continue to do, and then reporting back to you all. So I think in the not too distant future, there is a project to look at that area from a planning and zoning perspective, not just the path, but that whole area that's identified in the 2024 city plan as transportation, what is appropriate for airport use, what is appropriate for green space. That would be a planning project, and we're looking at that in a not too distant fiscal year. The specific project, the path, is on the development review side. It's sort of part of the airport's permitting associated with terminal expansion and things like that. So that's an active project that we are actually meeting next week with them on details associated with the path. Yeah.
So I have a question, and they're probably irrelevant to the LDRs, but the LDRs don't define whether which buildings get electrical inspections. Is that by city ordinance? That's separate?
Yes.
It's not part of the LDRs at all?
Correct.
Okay.
Anything that's on the code side of things, whether we're talking about life safety or plumbing or electrical, that is through the fire marshal's office. That's through the ordinances that you have adopted and the agreements with the fire marshal's office.
And then what about thermal enveloping and energy efficient, construction methods? Is that based
Same
upon
thing.
same thing?
The only exception to that is that it is a requirement through the LDRs that that the building have rooftop solar or an alternative.
That's
so
the
not
only-
the thermal envelope,
Right.
but the generation of electricity. Otherwise, that falls entirely. That's actually a slightly different category. That falls under the state building codes.
Right.
So that is not in the fire marshal's office either. That's entirely under state
when
energy code.
we talk about Act 250 energy stretch codes, are those still a thing? Involved
Yes
into
and
something
no.
else?
So we have adopted the stretch code. So it is an authority for municipalities to state that that there's the regular code and the stretch code.
Yeah.
So we have, as a municipality, through our LDR, but functionally it happens through the state energy code. That's the yes part. The no part is that the reformulation of the codes in 2024 have sort of gotten rid of the stretch and instead gone to a points-based system that has sort of required for everybody. So the bar was raised across the board. But
So
to the extent that a stretch exists, we require it.
it's a state requirement, though.
It's a state rule that we are authorized to say you must meet the higher code as a condition of getting a certificate of occupancy from us. So they have to fill out the form.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. For the CO. And who makes the final determination?
That's a self-certification that we.
That's right.
We
That's right.
verify that they have self-certified it in that manner.
Boy, I wish. I'm looking at the rental registry person right now.
Yeah, and that's
That
it's-
electrical
it's
code
a-
inspection people, because they really.
Well, it's a subject area that the Energy Committee has been looking at about authority and what resources the state has put into it. It's a complex subject that I'm happy to come back with you with more
Okay.
detail.
Yeah, another day. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Paul, it looked like there were opportunities for interface with other committees here. It seemed like in the housing area, it was a lot on the regulatory side, but I'm hoping some of these, I'm interpreting this, some of these is more informal sharing of priorities and goals as well.
Absolutely, both in terms of the Planning Commission's work plan. I know when Jesse and I met with the chairs of the committees earlier this summer, they expressed a lot of interest in collaboration and coordination, so we're excited about that. I mentioned earlier about the economic development 2 charges. So this is a somewhat new process for the Planning Commission for non-consultant driven projects to lay out a charge. Included in there are specific, which committees are specifically intended to have a role in it. All are welcome, but to try to enumerate that a little bit more specifically. So in this case, the Economic Development Committee is specifically cited as they should be a formal part of this process. As projects move forward, and they are in other areas, that's part of formalizing exactly what you're talking about.
Any other comments from the council? And you gave some directions earlier.
Yep.
All right.
Well, thank you for your time, everyone. We'll see you, I'm sure, very soon again.
Make
Thank
sure
you
you vote
for all your
tomorrow.
work.
Pardon me?
Thank you for all your
Oh.
work.
And,
Our
and
pleasure.
And
enjoy
all staff.
and enjoy voting tomorrow.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
you.
Can vote
Thank you. I'm
tomorrow.
very excited.
Oh, that's right. Have you already voted?
I'm saving it for the big election day for the first
Nice. Thank you, Paul. Is Amanda online yet? No. Shaking of heads. All right. Do you mind if we move on to the next item? Okay. So item 13, approve a coffee with a counselor schedule through Town Meeting Day 2025. And I did bring all the posters back to Andy last week, so they're out of my possession now.
So you, at a previous meeting, you talked about your coffee with the counselor initiative and would like it to continue, and asked us to come back to you with a set of recommendations of dates that align to other priorities and opportunities happening in the city. Here's Amanda. So we can make this quick. So we've laid that out in the memo to you, some dates. So you can agree to this and start signing up. Really, the one question we're asking is, do you want to hold a session before your budget retreat on December 12th or right after your budget retreat on December 12th? You will have received the city budget on December 2nd.
I'm sorry, will the public have already, I guess from my perspective, it's always probably wonderful to have it after the public has seen it. Therefore, we'll have more sort of granular statements, at least from my perspective.
So either way, the public will receive it on December 2nd. We'll do a comprehensive presentation to the community that night and to you, and often the other paper picks it up.
Okay.
So it will be out in the conversation, and of course, you all can lead any other conversation you want.
So if we do it on the 7th and advertise it as a opportunity before our budget meeting for people to comment, that might actually increase the attendance of that meeting.
Yeah, so either one, you can do that for either one. So just as a reminder, you will receive the budget on December 2nd. We will then have our budget retreat with the leadership team where you'll get all of the budget, it broken down by department in more detail.
Mm-hmm.
And then at your December, I believe it's 18th meeting, you'll have a conversation about it and warn a public hearing. Then you will hold a public hearing in the beginning of January, and then you will approve your budget to go to the voters on the 13th of January. So you have about 6-7 weeks to have this conversation with the community once you receive the scenarios you've requested.
So my first question is, how often do you want to have these? Twice a month? Once a month? We can change it as we need to, but
So what we're recommending is once a month, but for February going into town meeting day, where you may actually want to have more communication to the community.
and do we want to continue having it? I mean, it's very convenient to have it at the schools, but there is a cost to that, right? Because some invoices have been passed back to the city because they have to have a janitor come open up the building, right? So there's a cost to it, which I wasn't aware of until I saw that email.
So
Surprised because
I think we can continue the schools. I like the library. I have a little trepidation about opening up, say, going into a private business, a bakery, and opening a tab for the public. I mean, it's kind of not controlled. Like people may open tab at Burlington Bagel, and 50 people show up. It just feels to me like a little bit lack of control there that makes me nervous, honestly, to do that kind of thing.
you mean Panera wouldn't let me bring in my own coffee maker?
There's also the possibility that if asked, some of these businesses might sponsor these meetings as a community service.
But I guess I would lean towards what the cautions that are, at least the concerns or possible trepidations that Andrew has. If we're in a public place and there's 6 of us or 8 of us sitting around talking about South Burlington, nothing stops 10 other people who happen to be there from South Burlington and not South Burlington just want to join the discussion. And if the purpose is primarily for us to get sounding from the people who are residents of South Burlington, I do see the school. It's not perfect. It's not. I mean, there is no perfect solution, but I still see the school as a very environment in which it's clearly people from South Burlington. It's an environment in where we're there primarily to talk, and I think the cost is nominal. So I would tend to sort of see the school as the optimal.
Have the schools given any feedback that it's difficult for them to ask a janitor to come in and?
No, but there was one, I think one of you, a couple of you had experience where they didn't show up.
Outside, which it was a nice thing.
They didn't come. They didn't come.
No.
Yeah.
But the library should work also well.
Well, that's one good location.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So you have 3 places.
Right.
Sorry. Chamberlain, then the library is sort of the center, and
Yep.
then you have
Orchard.
and the library we don't have to pay for, so it's only every 2 out of 3
So
months.
that's a good compromise, I think. Yeah, I like doing it in the schools, and I urge you, bring your own coffee maker, bring your own coffee, right? I mean, it's a lot cheaper and it's hot.
In what response?
I
In
only have
response?
smalls.
And you just bring your own. I brought my own mugs, right? They're all clean.
I just have a small espresso, a little French
Oh, the little
press
French
machine.
press? Well, you just have to do it a lot then, bring your tea kettle too, right?
In response to what Mike said, the one thing I think would be nice about being in a more public place is South Burlington resident is in getting coffee, they didn't even think about it. And we're there, and it's an opportunity for people who wouldn't otherwise come to go, oh, this is going on, I'll stay for a few minutes. And to get input from people who wouldn't otherwise say, I'm going to go to the school to see this. So
There is no. I'm willing to concede
yeah,
there is no.
there is and I know that our state legislators do it in public places. They have Martin Lalonde does it at Panera and other places. So, and the concern of containment or cost out of control, I think that could easily be monitored if.
But he doesn't give away free coffee, does he?
I don't know what he does.
I don't think he does.
There you
Can
go.
we
We don't have
try
to
a couple
either.
of versions either way? I mean, can we mix it up over the?
I'd love
the
to
12?
try a public place
Try
and
one
just see how
public,
it
the
goes.
School,
I don't.
library.
Public place is fine, but I wouldn't offer to purchase anything for the.
No.
Yeah.
I have no
Yeah.
problem with that
Yeah,
either.
they can just go eat their own. You know.
Yeah, I wouldn't open a tab.
No.
Yeah,
Unless
my
you're
my
dead.
sense is that Andy and others considered this when recommending these places because it was really part of equity and inclusion in terms of going to where people can get to and might be. So I would like to try a few of the spots that are recommended. To me, it's worked pretty well at the schools because it also serves the purpose of getting folks there and into those facilities as well. But I think in the spirit of, the feedback of going to where people may be gathering, I think some of these might be worth trying.
Barb, service online. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, I just was going to say, why not just make it bring your own coffee, and then those people who drink tea or whatever, and then that makes it easier for everybody.
Great idea.
Bring coffee for the counselor.
Yeah.
I
BYOC.
mean, call it conversation with a counselor, and just tell people to bring whatever their favorite, non-alcoholic beverages of choice.
I brought 12 different
Conversation
types
with
of tea. To my.
Conversation with a counselor would be a great change to the name. No.
Just
yeah,
a thought.
Conversation with a counselor. Bring your own coffee.
Bring your own espresso machine.
There you go.
That's cheating. Thank you, Barb.
A lot to be thrown out with those.
All right, so we will start advertising these dates as outlined in the memo. So if folks want to start signing up, you can send your names to Andy and me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
We will need,
And thank you, Andy.
before our next council meeting, 2 folks for November 16th.
Okay. All right, we're going to jump back now to number 11, which is the public art work plan. I see Amanda Holland is online. Good evening, Amanda. Good evening, Penny. Good evening, Alana.
Hello. Good evening.
We can't hear Amanda. Wait, we're going to, hold on. We're getting there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we turn it up a little bit? Or?
No, this is our
okay.
challenge. So just, again, this is your opportunity to start receiving the proposed work plans from your policy committees, aligned to your policies and strategies, and consider approving or amending them, or amending and then approving them. So Amanda, do you want to walk us through the work plan?
Sure. And I'll try to speak as loudly since it sounds like I'm quiet on your end. But yeah, I'm Amanda Holland, the new chair of the Public Art Committee. And it sounds like I have another fellow member there in person with Penny, who was the past chair. And we are just here to review the committee's fiscal year 25 work plan, which is included in your packet. And I'm just going to go over some of the highlights quickly, which would be, first on the list is an issue of a call to artists for public art on 2 of the city center TIF projects, which is Williston Road Streetscape and the Garden Street project. Those 2 have been waiting in the wings for a while, and we're ready to tackle those and put out there a call for art for those two projects, and also there's continuing to be engaged in the development and of the construction of the pedestrian bridge as that is moving forward. Also, in our work plan is continuing to enhance the content of our committee web page on the city's page. We've done some work to that in the past year or two, and looking for more ways to add information and just engage the community in what's going on. We also want to support inclusion of art and cultural opportunities citywide through the development review process and procuring a new art installation. We have been working with staff and the DRB as needed when projects come through, and that's been one way we've been able to help look at projects citywide, but also utilizing the funding from the budget to procure a new piece of art that's outside city center. We also are facilitating public art shows and engagement through the city's gallery, which is coordinated by the curator, and we work with her closely. Continue to refine intent and outcomes for the city's cultural plan. We intend to communicate with local and regional art organizations and businesses. So those are some of the main things from the work plan that you'll see in there. And I also just wanted to highlight some of our successes from this last work plan year. For those of you that have either hopefully seen it in person, or if not, seen the paper article on the J.C. Park art installation titled Infinite Hue. That was recently installed, and so I encourage you to check that out. And also, one of our other successes was working with you all to get approval for the cultural plan to move forward. You allocated funding from ARPA, and we understand that there was the need to put that effort on hold while initiating that effort on hold while staff has the capacity to finish and do other projects currently and able to facilitate that contract. But we just wanted to put the plug out there, the reminder to ensure that funding is allocated in the future fiscal year so that project can move forward. I'm looking off to my side here to see if I've reached all my notes. Those are the points I wanted to hit, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there's anything that seemed unclear, or I don't know if Penny had anything else she wanted to state from there in the room.
You covered it.
I had a question about, I'm looking at the part of the work plan associated with weighing in on L.D.R changes. Can you give me some examples of that? I'm struggling a little bit to see the connection there, but it's probably because I'm not familiar. So I'd appreciate any clarification.
Sure. That has been one of the newer activities that our committee has been engaged in. There have been, I can think of 2 instances, I don't know if there might have been a third, where the projects have moved forward, one of which was a building in City Center where there is a part in the LDRs, and I can't think of where it is, where to deal with part of your, if you can't meet all of your like landscaping budget, that you can substitute in some public art. I may be totally butchering that, and Alana or someone else can jump in that's there. And so there have been some projects that have come to us in that avenue of more of the advisory role. So the developer has come and shared their proposal of what they are considering for public art, and then we've given our feedback just on our thoughts and considerations for them as they move forward. So it's more of a like other committees. I mean, I used to serve on the bike ped committee, so it's coming and sharing things, and then that subject matter expert group is providing feedback for how they think it fits or could be enhanced.
And then another example, if I may provide one, is
Microphone.
I think it's on. Oh, but I wasn't close enough. Sorry.
the other example is here right at the end of Garden Street, where I don't know if that one was really so much required, but the developer did come and show us the big sculpture that they wanted to use there, and just to get our input and kind of reflection on what did we think of what they were up to. So it's more, sometimes it's been advisory and sometimes it's been more as a requirement of something in their planning process as a developer to show us what they're up to. So there's been a mix of different things. And so our committee's been working on how do we be clear about what our role is and be helpful to that process when we're asked.
Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I'm just questioning, when it references same basically consultation role, as I understand it, on the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, and it says link to active transportation plan. Is this something that you've already been doing and you wish to continue, or is this something that you're trying to introduce into the master plan program as we go forward?
That piece is, I mean, the active transportation plan, I believe, is close to wrapping up, and the other two are more getting in the getting going method. So I think that's more the point of identifying that, while we're talking about public art, all of these other related efforts are going on. A lot of, for one instance, it's that, when we're looking at where we could place public art, a lot of that is on our public property, especially the parks. For instance, we just put that last piece of art in JC Park. So I think that it's just the acknowledgement that we want to be aware of what the other groups are identifying, what they want for those spaces, or how they see connections happening, so that it can just inform our work, and we can make sure that with the active transportation, we can be getting people to the places that we want to activate with art, or have it be a consideration that they can get there. So I think with the other two, it's more, we want to engage with the ones that are going to be happening, so that we have an understanding of the intent and goals for those spaces and how that might align with the work that we do and how we could help those committees meet their goals.
Great. I personally think that makes a lot of sense, and adds to this, creating this common denominator throughout the city, because the parks and open space are about spreading throughout the city, and this will be another vehicle to spread your work throughout the city as well in an equitable way.
Yeah, this is so important because, public art is that final decoration that creates place, in a community, apart from like the architecture of housing and commercial spaces and landscaping, right? That's that last little fixture that really puts the icing on the cake. And, the Infinite Hue is a good example of that. Amanda, what ideas are floating around for the Williston Streetscape project for public art? Are there any yet?
Can I defer to Penny for that one? No, I'm just kidding.
I think it's fair to say there aren't many really yet. We're really, it's been laid out where it might be able to be placed and things like that, but not beyond that. It's early for us, stages for there. But to add to what Amanda was saying about the different plans, part of something that came out of the city meetings you held about committees and how they might work better, it's partly came out of that, is that we all, as these separate committees, recognize that we can benefit from understanding a bit better what each other is doing. And so that's part of why that's in our work plan, is to sort of be better connected.
It's a good compliment among the groups, right? Council, have any other questions at all? Well, I thank you for your plan. Is there anything else that you wanted to say, Amanda?
No, that is all that we wanted to cover. I thank you very much for the time tonight.
You guys should approve it.
I would move that we approve the proposed work plan as is.
A second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thanks,
Amanda.
moving on to item 15, which is review the significant agenda topics below for the council's regular meeting on November 18th. Do you want me to read those off?
Nope, they're just for your information, but a couple of changes since we warned this meeting on Thursday. So following the long view meeting, I don't believe we need a agenda item on that since there's no action for the council. However, we will be adding the housing committee resolution and the local option tax agenda item postponed from tonight. So it's a potentially a meaty agenda.
Will we get to the noise ordinance at some point, Jesse?
Andrew, that is on our executive team agenda for tomorrow morning.
Oh, thank you.
Are we adding the sexton's request to this next meeting?
It's up to you guys.
Could you repeat that? I was.
Yes.
This request we got from the sexton's committee?
I would, having worked with them and being really impressed with what they did when worked out in the cemetery within that one day, and the fact that they have just been giving an award of or a contribution of $50,000, and to what Lori mentioned earlier, their request for a staff person and a connection to the council. To me, I think it's a prudent decision, and we need, I think, to also clarify the question. I think it was a fair question they asked about when we put a moratorium. I guess we at a minimum need to clarify whether it's burial or selling lots. Excuse me. So I would favor adding it to the agenda.
So I'm happy to add it. I will remind you that this is something that you have on your bike rack for FY25. So if you're going to pull it off the bike rack, it just means we're going to slow down other priorities. So it's certainly your prerogative. But
I think we should add it just because we may have misspoke in terms of what we deferred. I guess in my mind it was let's not sell new plots, but you know, if someone passes away and they have a plot, you know, we may have misspoke and we may need to correct that. So, and it's maybe, you know, time is of the essence.
Well, that plus, I mean, if you're a cemetery now and you don't have a columbarium, I mean, you're not saleable, and that's a really big deal now, right? Because that's where the industry's going. So, I don't mind adding it, but like Jesse said, it's on the rack.
I don't think we have to reopen all the issues. I think columbarium and others, but just to sort of close the loop on what Andrew was saying, clarify this one issue question, and even if we just put, maybe you don't have a staff person, but even having a city council liaison, just at least there's a showing is that as they proceed with whatever they're doing this year, that there's an interest and intent to support, because ultimately if they weren't doing this job, it would fall on us, to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Lori? Yes? No?
I only need two of you. I got it.
Okay. All right. That's two. That's fine. Never mind.
Thank you.
Keep your opinions to yourself.
It doesn't matter what I think.
All right. So you satisfied with? Okay, good. We will now move on to convene as the Liquor Control Commission.
So moved.
No, there wasn't a motion there.
I moved to convene as liquor control.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 We are now convened, and we need a motion to approve the Stewart's Shops Corporation tobacco license, and Stewart's is taking over Simon's? Is that right?
They're taking
Jolly's. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right. Good.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I now need a motion to come out of the
Move
commission.
out. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Well, let's not do it too fast. All right. Great. I know. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to number 17, which is other business. Who has some other business? You must have some other business. No?
Lightning, Tim.
I have one quick piece of other business.
Go ahead.
Jesse, in moving to talk about the noise ordinance, I just wanted to say, and I don't remember when I mentioned this, but in one of the meetings we were having, one resident talked about the chipping noise, which is part of the noise ordinance, and they just also suggested that at least consider the impacts of rock crushers, which, if brought onto a job site, can have similar noise impacts to chipping, and maybe even greater for a longer duration. So that might broaden the scope just a little.
And a quick one I had is I heard about a pretty I won't have detail, but a substantial federal grant for clean water studies, and I just wondered if that was anything South Burlington might be participating in relative to some of the feedback we've had from at least one resident regarding the Belter property, I believe, and then with anything that we, any, ongoing concern we've had relative to our own watersheds. But I don't know any more than that. It was a pretty substantial federal grant coming
So
to the state, though.
that brings that item back into view, which is the status that the guard might have on the Belter Farm PFAS or foam, water. It's not purification.
They will be here on the 18th.
But are they talking about that?
Yes, they're.
I thought they're talking about the water.
Well, they're talking about the leftover water from the spill.
Which is different than what Tim is speaking.
Yeah, that's different. You're talking about the water that's going
The
into the
old-
waterway at the Belton
Yeah,
Farm.
like the Belter Farm has a some purifier or some mechanism to extract PFAS, right? I don't know what it's doing, and I don't know where it's located. And they came and talked to us about it years ago, probably like 6 years ago, maybe 7. And I don't remember who that was.
Someone sent us a recent email.
We have, and it would be great to get an update, but I don't. What happened was at the Army Guard, not at the Air National Guard, and it's going to be a separate group because one is the airport, right, and one is the helicopter hangar area. So, do you want me to find out from Colonel Smith?
Sure.
Unless you know
Nope,
that?
go for it.
I'll go find out, and then maybe they can. We'll try to get somebody to come in.
Elizabeth, do you by any chance remember the name of that grant? No. Okay. Well,
I can try to find it again. It's likely a VPR type.
I can have Tom search for it.
Any other business? Okay, then. Well, we need a motion to go into executive session, but do you want to have a break before we do that, or go into executive then have a little break? Do you want a break?
No.
Let's get done. Let's get done.
Huh?
Let's get done.
We can
I'm
move
thirsty.
to go into executive session so Travis can shut down and everything, and you guys can
Well, let's have the motion.
have a
Tim.
break before we go.
Tim,
I move that we go into
Not drinking that.
executive session. Is there a specific?
There's this thing you have to read.
I move. Motion 1 or motion 2?
Both.
Oh, I read them both?
First one first.
Okay. I move to find that premature general public knowledge of probable litigation to which the city may be a party would clearly places council at a substantial disadvantage because the council risks disclosing the city's possible defense strategy in public. Motion 2.
Stop.
Okay.
That's one motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. The second motion is based on the finding. I move that we enter into executive session to receive confidential attorney-client communication made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body pursuant to 1 VSA 1 E in paren and F in paren.
Inviting.
Do I have a second?
Inviting.
I'm sorry, to include in the executive session, Jared Pellerin, Deputy City Attorney, Jesse Baker, City Manager, Steve Locke, Deputy City Manager, and Fire Chief.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we will not be coming back to back to the meeting after executive session. So
meeting.